let's put our hands together and welcome Sri Sumandala.
Good morning. President of FAST, Lieutenant General K.M. Seth, Sri M.P. Barua, former Secretary Tourism Government of India, my former boss, Sri Vinod Zutshi, Mr. Arvind Singh, who was also former Tourism Secretary and with whom I've had a privilege of working while I was at the World Tourism Organization, my good friend, Madam Jyoti Mayal, Sri V.P. Agarwal, ladies and gentlemen. I think this seminar is organized to commemorate the World Tourism Day. And I think the topic that we have chosen could not have been more apt. It's about taking India tourism forward. And there are two areas that are listed out. One is technological innovation and the other is green sustainability, through which we work on it. So one of the things that I always find is that what is the problem statement for tourism in India? And I think the biggest problem statement we have is that there is a big gap between potential and performance. We all understand that India has the goods to deliver on the tourism front, but for some reason, for the past several decades, we have not been able to deliver. And I think the reason why tourism becomes extremely important for this country is for, as several of my illustrious colleagues have spoken before me, is its ability to create jobs. Tourism can create jobs at all levels, and tourism can create jobs in big numbers. As the economy progresses towards fourth industrial revolution and your modes of production become more and more technology oriented, they will become more capital intensive but less labor intensive. And which is why I think the necessity for sectors like tourism to do the heavy lifting, to create the jobs that an economy like India so dearly needs. And tourism can create jobs at the managerial level down to the menial level, and essentially sustain livelihoods. It can sustain communities around tourism areas. So I think that is the importance that tourism has for us. Now, if we look at the contribution that tourism makes for our GSDP in the 2023, it accounts for 5.04% of the 1 out of 10 jobs come from tourism, and about 10% of the GDP is contributed to by the tourism sector. So why is it that in India we are only at around 5%? And how do we double this to 10% in the next few years? I think this is the problem statement that we need to see, and we need to understand as to how to move what are the levers that we need to move to make this happen. So since May, after I have come back to the ministry as additional secretary, I have been playing around with numbers a little bit. I've looked at the government numbers closely. I've also had a meeting with Mr. Barua and the cohort and Jyoti Mayal and all of them, and to look at what those numbers look like. So I've looked at the numbers from the Government of India, the numbers from the industry, and I've triangulated the numbers from the world bodies. And I've just put together a few slides, to sort of give an idea of what I think where the problem, some of the areas where the problem lies. So these are the numbers that we all know. That international tourist arrivals in 23 account for 17 million, and foreign tourist arrivals is 9.2 million. That is, international tourists have also include Indian passport holders, but who normally reside abroad. But foreign tourist arrivals are only foreign passport holders. Domestic tourism visits are 2,510 million or 2.5 billion. And our outbound is at 27 million, and our contribution to GDP is 5.04%, and our contribution to employment is 76 million. Now this 76 million is an omnibus figure. This is something I think we need to do a little bit more work to make sense of where it is contributing from. So apart from this, I have tried to look at what the numbers really mean. So let's look at foreign tourist arrivals, because international tourist arrivals come, but several of them are Indian community who are coming back. Some of them are staying in hotels, but most of them are going back home to visit friends and relatives. So I think for us, the more defining group of them is going to be the foreign tourist arrivals. Now, foreign tourist arrivals comprise of several categories. You have leisure and holiday, you have business, you have medical, you have others. So these are some of the subsets that are there. And I think for our purpose, we need to look at leisure and business, and leisure and holiday and business, which typically accounts for 4.2 million. Now, out of this entire piece that we have, I think this 4.2 million is the number which will have the elasticity. And I think this is the number that we need to grow, and we need to have a strategy to make this grow. So similarly, if you look at domestic tourism visits, I'm sorry, I think the lettering has become too small for you to read, but let me try and explain. Is some of the categories that you see is leisure and holiday, you have business, you have medical, you have shopping, and all of them. And again, in domestic tourism visits, we think that 2.5 billion people traveling, that's a big number. But if you take out pilgrimage people, and then you basically look at where are these people staying, and you look at just the hotels, that number drops to about 20 to 30% of the total figure. And out of that, if you were to look at leisure and holiday and business and shopping, which would be three categories which come, that number is still going to be even smaller. And that is where the elasticity is going to come from. So, in absolute terms, that number is still very big. It's very difficult for people around the world to wrap their head around Indian numbers, but I'll show you what that looks like. And similarly, when you look at outbound, we say 27 million are those who are going out. But if you look at those who are going for leisure, that's only about 7.8 million also. It is still a very large number for people who are going out. The others are going for business and for educational purposes, etc. They are going to travel anyway. So I think the 7.4 million that we have is the number that we need to focus on, because every dollar saved is a dollar earned. We do not need to get international tourists, but if we are able to create and retain even 10% of the tourists within the country who would normally go abroad, it adds to our economy significantly. Now, this slide typically shows you as to what the growth would look like. The first column shows you in a business as usual, and the second is if we do our targeted growth, some of the things that Jyotimayal has spoken about, of giving industry status, rationalization of GST. If we tick all those 10 boxes, I think we will be able to push the needle further. So, if we do not do anything, and we think that if we just take the growth rate that has been happening in the foreign tourist arrivals in the country, you remove the COVID years and you take an average, then you will see that by 2029, the numbers are going to go to 10.4 million in a business as usual phenomenon. And if we are able to actually move the trend needle, it's going to go to 11.9 million. So I think that is the sort of a growth rate that we are seeing. In domestic tourism, again, we've been growing typically at 7.74%. So if we let the growth happen, then we're going to go to, by 2029, to 932 million, which is the leisure and business and shopping thing. And if we push the needle, it will go above a billion number. And similarly, I have said 10% is for the outbound is what we need to look. And these are the numbers that are there. So today we are at 79 million are the total number of jobs that we create. And by 2029, if we do everything right, we can create 93 million jobs, which is a big number. But one of the mistakes that everybody takes in India is that we assume that India has been the fastest growing large economy for several years now. We've been averaging the growth of over 7%. And we think that will automatically convert into growth for the tourism sector. But I think this is something that we need to clearly understand, is that these numbers that I show is, I think, the most critical slide, and this is the last slide that I want to show you, is today, if you take all the branded rooms that are there in the country and those that are under development, that accounts for 0.18 million, that's 1,80,000 rooms. But if we were to look at the number that we have talked about, that those who are only staying in hotels and those who are coming for business and leisure and shopping, etc., and we look at the room requirement, today we should be having 4 lakh rooms already in India, in addition to the 1.8 lakh rooms that are there. So that is the demand and supply mismatch. So people don't get So people think that India is in a great position because hotels are getting great rates, and hoteliers are not complaining. But the most important thing for us to realize is that there is a supply and demand mismatch, and which is why it is pushing prices up, and which is why it is also pushing people to go outbound much more. So if we go to 2029, that delta is going to grow even wider. By 2029, it is estimated that we will have 240,000 branded hotel rooms in the country, but we're going to be needing 850,000 rooms by 2029, assuming the growth numbers, if it is business as usual, which happens. So what does it mean in terms of additional investments that are required for branded hotel rooms? Today, we should have had 55,000 crores of investment to meet that additional 4 lakh hotel rooms. And by 2029, that number would actually rise to 1,30,000 crores in terms of investment. So similar story for unbranded rooms. If you look at those that are unbranded hotel rooms under development, we have about 1.5 million rooms now, but we should be having today an additional 2.8 million hotel rooms. And by 2029, we would have 2 million hotel rooms, that's the estimate, and we need to have an additional 6.5 million or 65 lakh hotel rooms, which means that today we need to have 4 lakh crores of investment going into building these unbranded hotel rooms, and that will actually go on to 8,72,000 crores by 2029. So I think if you have to define it in terms of a problem statement, is India is growing rapidly and there is nothing in the economy to show that it will slow down. But one of the things that the big misses that is happening is that tourism is not keeping pace. And I think the reason why that is happening is that there is a huge supply and demand mismatch. While demand is growing, is rocketing ahead, supply is not keeping up. And I think the reason why that is happening is for 2 reasons. The first is I think we have to change the capital structure, because the capital structure that we have today is not amenable to developing something, an asset class like hotels, which are typically medium gestation projects or medium to long-term gestation projects. Today, most of the hotels qualify under real estate, which means that your payback needs to happen within an 8-year period and your interest rates are higher. So it is just not making sense for people to invest into hotels. So one of the things that the government of India has recently done is to bring hotel investments into the harmonized list of infrastructure. But they have put a rider and they have said it will only apply to places with population of less than 1 million, which is essentially restricting it quite a lot. So I think we need to open that up. The second thing that we need to do is to get the states to incentivize hotels. And I think the whole thing from an economy perspective that we need to look at is how do we take investors past the tipping point so that they are able to make that investment with the confidence that it's going to work. There will be business risk, everything else. But as a case, when you work with the numbers, it should be something that is remunerative, because investments do not happen on passion alone. Investments happen because there is money to be made. So I think these are some things that we need to work, and state needs to really look at what are the levers that are there for them to incentivize investors to come and invest into the hospitality segment, which means essentially they need to look at GST for capital construction, they need to look at power tariffs, lowered power tariffs, they need to free up the development norms, because in India, for example, today, hotels have a very high requirement of parking that they are expected to build. But unfortunately, in India, people do not travel like in the US on car when they go to different places. So you do not require that. So that's actually adding about 15 to 20% of the additional cost of the hotel is getting added because of that. Similarly, when you travel all around the world, you will find that there is no big offset between the road and the hotel. In India, we insist on a very large offset. So all of these make the development cost of the hotels also go higher. So I think there is a great case for rationalization from the state side for us to make this happen. So several years ago, and when Mr. Zutshi was Secretary Tourism, we had done this Incredible India Investor Summit, IITIS. And I had the privilege, and he had asked me to go to New York and look at what some of the investors are looking for. And I met the CEO of Warburg and Pincus. And he said that we've started a fund around the same time, at around the same corpus between India and China. And China has already crossed 600 hotels, and India is still struggling at around 75 or 80, and the elementary and others which are there. So I think there's a great case for us to relook as to why investors are not able to do that. If we create the right conditions for investment to come, then everything else will fly, then investments will happen, then business will take off, tourism can live up its potential. We will have all the other challenges like skill development and all of them. But those are challenges that are incumbent upon fulfilling this basic criteria, because if you do not have a hotel room, that's the basic block. If you do not have a hotel room, there is no problem. There is no jobs, there is no promotion, there is no publicity, no marketing. All of that doesn't make sense. So I think that is something that we need to look at. So anyway, most of these things have already been spoken to by all the other illustrious speakers who have spoken ahead of me in terms of infrastructure status, marketing, regulatory reform, smart taxation, service excellence, sustainable practice, niche tourism, rigorous monitoring, safety and security, and crisis preparedness. So I think if we tick these 10 boxes well, we should be able to move the needle ahead. So let me now talk a little bit about the theme that we have, that we want to discuss today, which is around technology innovations and green sustainability. So I think the biggest challenge that India has today, and that is something again several of them have spoken, is over-tourism. Most of our destinations are suffering from capacity issues, because of which the visitor experience is actually dropping seriously. So unless we are able to create that visitor experience, that promise of service delivery is matched, it's going to be difficult for us. It's going to be a challenge, because we all know that most of our hill stations today have become impossible to reach, and they have become so crowded. If this room can hold 100 people and if you put 500 people, it's not going to be comfortable for anybody. And I think that is the problem that we have today in most of our destinations. So I think we need to start thinking about how do we put some limits on the number of people who come into a destination, and how do we ensure that the quality of the experience does not get compromised. Recently, I read a tweet by a doctor on social media. He said that he was going to a hill station, and he and his wife were going to celebrate their wedding anniversary. What was to be a 3-hour ride took 8 hours. By the time they reached, it was already dark. They were so tired, they could hardly celebrate, and the next morning, they had the anxiety to reach back in time. So as soon as they woke up, they had an early breakfast and left. Now that's completely beyond the purpose. Those are things that we need to avoid. When a tourist pays the money, we need to ensure that the experience is delivered. So I think we need to see as to how we revert this whole capacity piece. Retrofitting regulation is always going to be difficult. So one of the things that we should start planning for aggressively from now is how do we start visualizing and building alternate destinations. And Mr. Besbaro, when he spoke, mentioned the 50 destinations, etc. I think we probably need something like closer to 150. For example, if we have a place like Shimla, which all of us know, during the season it gets totally overcrowded, and if there is any other place we can open up within say 20-30 kilometers of driving distance from there, you bring the whole ecosystem of tourism there is enough purchasing power for us to support something like that. And I think this is something that we need to look at. How can we do some original thinking to open up newer destinations? I think incrementally building on existing destinations is something that is probably not going to work out. The second problem statement that we also have, and it is connected to this, is that India has some really outstanding assets. If you look at the World Economic Forum's Travel and Tourism Development Index, we always score very highly on the attractions that we have. But while our attractions are truly, incredible, world class, I think the tourist experience is rather poor. Because suppose even if you go to a fantastic monument like the Taj Mahal or the Qutub Minar, you would still need to be able to view it from a shaded area. You would still need a place where you can drink some water, use a clean washroom, have a meal. So all of those things, I think, are something that we need to work on how to improve tourist experience. And most of our focus is now happening on conservation rather than on the experience that we provide to the tourists. So recently we've had a meeting with the Archaeological Survey of India, and they seem to be happy to work with us. So the idea is, for example, in Qutub Minar there is 27 acres of land which is available. you could create several things like, fine dine experiences, entertainment options, interpretation centers. And I think it's very important for us when people come to visit any destination to frame the context. Nowhere else in the world will they allow you to walk into the destination without, framing the context for you in an interpretation center or, with a museum or, experience center. I think these are things that we need to work to enhance the visitor experience, and I think that is something that we will work with some amount of government funding, but I think largely from PPP we will be able to work around it. So most of us are convinced that growth is a given. There is, as far as India goes, there is absolutely no doubt that tourism is going to grow, but it's going to grow strongly and for several years to come. But the important thing is, what is the shape of this growth that we want? And Mr. Delbarova spoke about, it all depends on where you want to go. It's not just about building hotel rooms and, putting more money and, building more concrete, but it's about creating a meaningful tourist experience that is not only great for the tourists, but it should also be great for the host community. And I think therefore we need to also start looking at one important piece that Mr. Arvind Singh spoke about is the destination level work. Because when you say come to India, it means everything and yet it means nothing. Because India it can be Kerala, it can be Northeast, it can be J&K, it can be Rajasthan. They're all very different. It's very many worlds rolled into one. And similarly for destination development, when you say that I have a national approach on tourism and all of us will become responsible for tomorrow, that's not going to happen, because that work has to happen from the ground up at the destination level. People need to take responsibility, the industry needs to come together, the local authorities need to come together to see where they are and how is it that we can make this destination better. So I think from our governance perspective, typically today we have the government of India and we have the states, but we do not have any administrative structure which meaningfully works at the destination level, except perhaps in Kerala, where we have these very strong responsible tourism initiatives which work at the destination level and which have consistently delivered over the past several years. So I think as we look to go forward, there are two things that are very vital for us. One is technology innovation and the second is green sustainability. And I think both of these can be compared to a tree, because while technological innovations are like the leaves which sort of grow up and they're able to reach out to the sun and get photosynthesize the nutrients, it's equally important is sustainability, which is like the root system which needs to go deeper to keep the whole tree stable and to be able to get water and nutrients from the soil. So I think these two are not two different in separate things, but these are part of the same system and they work in very important ways. And one of the things that we also spoke about was about smart destinations. And I think this is really the way that we need to plan, because Tour España has had an ambitious program. It has had mixed results called Smart Destinations. But the idea really is, how do we make destinations exceptional for the visitors as well as for the host community? And how do we ensure that we optimize the offering that every destination has? So essentially what this means is that we need to bring in the responsible tourism framework at the destination, which means that we need to be environmentally responsible, do not take away from nature more than what it can give us. We need to be socially responsible, which means that the interaction between the host community and the tourist must be respectful, must be self-iterating, and they should be done in a framework of learning and understanding. And we should also have economic responsibility, which means that tourism is not something that is working out well for the tourist and for the hotelier, but it supports the entire community that lies around it by way of jobs, by way of showcasing their talent. It can be, handicrafts, it can be cultural, programs that the local community can do. The important thing for us is to intertwine both of them so that we are able to create an experience that is truly exceptional. And the hosts feel that tourism is something that is necessary for their sustenance. Because several years ago, when I was Director Kerala Tourism in 20 years ago, we started working on responsible tourism. And the reason why we got onto it, and it was a very nascent idea then, the reason was that it was inevitable for Kerala to get onto responsible tourism, because we have a very communities which are very assertive, and when you take tourists so close into a host community, there are going to be tensions. And I think that challenge is going to be all across the country, and I think we need to start planning on that. Mr. Vinod Zuchi has spoken about having the green mission for India. I think we need to have something at the national level, but the work needs to be happening from the ground up to make this happen. The second part is on how do we make smart destinations by using technology. I think the most important thing that we need to do is to bring data and technology together so that it's able to give you insights in real time. For example, in Spain, they have a system by which they're able to look at the occupancy in the hotels in that destination. So if a couple of hotels are doing full up and there are some of them are not doing so well, then there is a way by which the app suggests to others saying that these hotels are also available. The second thing they do is if there are certain periods when there is something at the destination level, if they think that the hotel occupancy is a little bit low, they will then plan for having events to be able to push up the occupancy for those days. But all of that happens at the ground level, and the most important thing that a destination management organization should do is to take a look at simple things like garbage management. Is the destination clean? Is the visitor experience good? And what are the additional experiences we can create within the destination to ensure that the person who comes here stays longer, spends more, and enhances the level of his experience. So I think from a national perspective, we need to prioritize technology. Mr. Zuchi has already spoken about how artificial intelligence, big data are working together. Today they say the tourists suffer from what is called the Google Maps syndrome. So if I'm traveling from India International Center back to my office, and if the Google Map shows that it's 10 minutes slower, I'm going to change my route and go elsewhere. So similarly, when tourists make that destination, if there is any chatter which is not positive about that destination, people will find another destination to go to. It's very important to have our ear to big data to understand what people are saying about it, and we have now artificial intelligence tools which work so beautifully so that you do not have to go through reams of information, but it can be presented to you, what is going wrong, to have that nimbleness. The second is how do we be prepared for this artificial intelligence in terms of, for those of you who use the Amazon app, few days ago they have come up with this Rufus, which is a feature as a part of Amazon. So what Rufus does is if you want to buy, say, golf balls, you just need to say, I want a low spin, high trajectory golf ball. And then it searches the whole universe on Amazon, and then it tells you which are the ones which comes to you. So it saves effort. And one of the biggest use cases that ChatGPT used when they launched was building tourism itineraries. So I think it's very important for us to understand the power of artificial intelligence in driving tourists towards some destinations, and we need to create the ecosystem and to create the information for us to take full use of that. So Internet of Things is something that's again working very strongly at the destination level. We need to make it a part of our responsible tourism agenda, and I think we need to have a national perspective on responsible tourism, or perhaps a green mission, and we need to allow the states to do it from the destination ground up by adapting it to the peculiar conditions that they may have. But the task ahead of all of us is significant, and it's not going to be easy, but the opportunity is huge, and where there is an opportunity, it's always good news, and I'm sure that all of us within the room will be able to make good sense of this opportunity. I'm very humbled to be a part of this panel. I've had 3 mentors who are sitting with me here, and their guidance has always been valuable. I would like to thank them for inviting me here, and I look forward to working with them and all of you to make tourism work for India. Thank you all, and Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, Rachel, and also for sharing how technological innovations can promote the growth of tourism in India. And I would now request Lieutenant K.M. Seth, President Past, to kindly do the honors of presenting a token of gratitude, a memento to our Honorable Chief Guest, Sri Suman Milangi. Thank you once again, sir, for that very inspiring address we had from you and for sparing your valuable time and being here with us. Thank you, sir. I would now request Sri V.P. Agarwalji, Vice President FAST, to kindly do the honors of presenting a token of gratitude to Sri M.P. Bezbalwaji. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for being here with us. We present to Sri Arvind Singh Ji. We present to Srimati Jyoti Mayan. Thank you, ma'am. We present to Sri Vinod Tutsi. We present to Lieutenant General K.M. Seth. And I would request Mr. Bezbalwa to kindly present to Mr. Agarwal before I invite him for the vote of thanks. And ladies and gentlemen, before Mr. Agarwal goes ahead with proposing the vote of thanks, we would like to